right, everyone, how you guys doing tonight? Good. Thank you. First of all, I want to apologize for my tardiness. I'm still learning Johannesburg move in terms of traffic, so it took me a moment to get here. But thank you guys so much for coming out. We're truly excited at the African Center for the Study of the United States to have this important lecture series. I mean, just to tell you a quick story, my wife, I told her, I said, man, we're going to have Marcus Garvey's son speak at the university. And she said, Marcus Garvey's son? She said, I thought that was 100 years ago. I said, he's the same age as my mom. So this is truly and Professor Ezra, this is truly a phenomenal experience that we're about to partake. To listen to the wisdom and the knowledge of individuals who are dedicated and who have dedicated their lives to a better African people. So without further ado, because I've already wasted 20 minutes of your time, I'm going to call up the mistress of ceremony for today's events. Mrs. Ashley Cleveland. She is a research associate here at the African Center for the Study of the United States. Without further ado,
good evening. Sawubona. Habari yako. Yes, moholo. Did I say it right? I tried. I tried. Good evening, colleagues, friends, esteemed guests, honoraries, dignitaries, and family alike. I have the esteemed pleasure of introducing Dr. Julius W. Garvey, a pioneer in medicine and a champion of equality. As Dr. Assad said, my name is Ashley Cleveland. I am a research associate here, an economist with the African Center for the Study of the United States, and I am honored, extremely grateful, and privileged to introduce our honor. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is with great pleasure that I stand before you today to introduce a remarkable individual whose name has left an indelible mark on the field of medicine and the ongoing pursuit of social justice. Allow me to present to you the extraordinary Dr. Julius W. Garvey.
Thank you so much for that wonderful welcome. It's indeed a pleasure for me to be here at the University of Witwatersrand and to be in South Africa, to be in Mother Africa, where we just recently celebrated Africa Day, and we were also celebrating the 60th anniversary of Sajid Kwame Nkrumah's book, Africa Must Unite. And I was lamenting that we have not followed through with this vision. And of course, we have not followed through with the vision of my father, who created a massive organization of African people from 1914 onwards, and more than 6 million people worldwide, but basically espousing Pan-Africanism and defining it in a way that had not been defined before. I had an opportunity yesterday to visit your Freedom Museum. And it was indeed a fantastic experience to see what African people have had to go through in their, as Nelson Mandela would say, their long march to freedom. And of course, the long march continues, and we saw the memoirs relative to Robert Sobukwe, Steve Biko, Oliver Tambo, and so many others who have been brutalized, the Sharpeville massacre, etc. I think you know the horrors here in South Africa. I think you know the disparities that still exist in South Africa. And I think you know that the long walk to freedom has not yet been achieved. We have had our long walk to freedom in the diaspora because, of course, we were kidnapped from Mother Africa. We were taken across the Atlantic to the Americas and to the Caribbean. And we fought our way free from slavery. Then we were also colonized. And certainly in the United States of America, the system of apartheid was really created there. And I think South Africa, it's interesting that this department is studying the United States of America. But the South African government, in creating apartheid, studied the way in which white people in America treated the African enslaved people. And later on, the sharecropping and the Jim Crow and the marginalization and dehumanization. So there's a lot that we have in common. And of course, we fought against colonialism, certainly in the Caribbean. And you also fought against colonialism on the continent here. And in terms of fighting against imperialism that both enslaved us and colonized us, and we were fighting for freedom, but then we had to define freedom because we could not find a place within the societies that had dehumanized us. It would have been an insult to our ancestors if all we did after 500 years of enslavement and apartheid, if all we did was to emulate the systems that had created the inhumanity that had been experienced and the many, many millions of people who died. So we had to be defining freedom. As I mentioned, my dad was one of those very honest, certainly Delaney from the United States of America, Biden, and others, Robert Love, antecedents to my father, who were defining Pan-Africanism and finding an African identity, because that's what was taken away from us in terms of our enslavement process. It was our identity. We were disconnected from the motherland, and we were encouraged to have historical amnesia because we were disconnected from each other, and we were disconnected from any source of information that would tell us about who we were as a people and who we had been historically over time. So all of this, had to be created. And it had to be created almost anew in some of our communities. But the interesting thing is that in recreating who we are as African people, and again, Pan-Africanism was first in the diaspora and then brought to the continent. We'll get back to that. But in recreating who we are, we had that ancestral memory of our traditions, which could not be taken away. Whether it was in the DNA or the memory bank, we don't know scientifically, how to describe that. But we had that memory of who we were as African people. And by that, I mean an African cosmology. We knew that we were part of the divine intention, meaning that we represented life. Life was created by divinity. And in terms of divinity creating life, life manifested as nature. All of the different diversity of nature, and it manifested as people. So there was a unity, a oneness between people in terms of a personhood, and in terms of nature, and in terms of divinity. And not only that was that with the unity in terms of relationship, but clearly there would have been a communication then. If we are part of the divine and the manifestation of the divine, then we must communicate with divine. And again, if we're part of nature and we're one with nature, then we must be able to communicate with nature. But of course, our understanding of that was perceived by the imperialists as, perhaps you might call it, magic, black magic, or voodoo, or hoodoo, or some kind of spirit nonsense. But it was spirit, but it wasn't nonsense. It was spirit that was connected to the divine. And we knew that we could gain information from the divine source. Some people call it God nowadays. You can call it the quantum soup, if you will. because that's what the materialistic scientists finally come to understand, what we have known for thousands of years. There's one source, and you can name the source God, you can name the source Allah, you can name the source whatever. Many religions have named the source differently. Our ancestors called it the primeval nu. That was our source, like living water. That was our source. So we understood that, and we were able to bring that to the forefront in terms of trying to create our communities. Because if we are one with the divine, and if we are one with nature, and we are the highest manifestation of nature, then it's up to us to manifest divinity fully. And that's what it means to be a human being. That's what it means to be a human person. We're not human animals. The human animal deals only with the five senses, because that's the level of consciousness of animals. So the human animal deals only with the five senses, the information that comes to the mind, the intellect through the five senses. And that's the basis of scientific materialism. It's all about the physicality and shall we say, the ability to achieve what we see in terms of the environment around us. We see what we hear, what we smell, what we taste, and what we can touch. That's the reality. That's the basis of materialism. That's not the basis of our thinking. The basis of our thinking, again, as I mentioned, is the spiritual essence of the human being. And that has to manifest in the physical environment. In other words, the three dimensions of space, time, and matter. So we are, if you will, fourth dimension people who have not relinquished our essential contact with divinity. So we're always divinity manifesting. And that's why we've been able to be so creative, because the unity with the universe, or with the cosmos, allows us to manifest the total potentiality of what has created us, and what therefore manifests in our spirit, if we can attune to those vibrations. And that's where it comes from in terms of creativity in music and dance and art. And of course, we're going to get to our creativity in terms of the societies in which we create, because we have to manifest the life force in a manner that is consistent with the oneness of the universe that I've just mentioned. That's our responsibility. That's our sacred duty, to allow the life force to manifest. And that's true in terms of nature. We must allow the different cycles of nature to manifest. We must not disrupt the cycles of nature, because if we disrupt the cycles of nature, and then we're disrupting what gives us life. The earth, the water, the sun, the air, all of those things give us life. And as I mentioned, it's sacred. So if we don't honor the nature itself, and if we're not sustainers of nature and the cycles of nature, then we're destroying the universe, and we're not being good stewards of the cosmos. And I think we can see that at the present time in terms of the climate crisis. This has been caused by people who dishonor nature. As a matter of fact, Francis Bacon back in the 17th century said, and he's one of the propounders of scientific materialism, he said, we're going to put Mother Nature on the rack and extract all of the secrets of Mother Nature. So you're going to torture Mother Nature with the scientific intellect and get all of Mother Nature's secrets. Now, Mother Nature's not going to allow that. And Mother Nature is blowing back at us. And of course, this is very serious, because then it's like destroying and if we destroy our home, then we destroy our nature as human beings. And manifesting ourselves as human beings in all of the fullness of our humanity. And I think that's important as what we think of ourselves as human beings, because system, what it has done over time is to dehumanize their own people. So if you look at systems that they have, for example, the way in which the capitalist system manifests, it's really a system of individualism. It's a system of competition. Adam Smith says it's not a benevolent system. There's no, hidden hand that's going to make sure that everything works out okay, because it's a competitive system. And as you know, in a competitive system, the guy with the big stick controls everything. So there's control in terms of the economy, and by the strongest guy, or the guy who's able to mobilize the most resources, or who has the most money. So as you know, at present time, within the capitalist system, industrial and monetary system, you have the greatest inequality ever on planet Earth, where 1 to 2% of the people control 80 to 90% of the wealth. This is not the way it's supposed to be, brothers and sisters. I think all of us know that. We're here to share, and we're here to care about each other, because again, we're manifestations of the divine. So when we look at the systems, we have to critique the systems. We can't simply just join the systems, because again, as I mentioned, the systems are the ones that have dehumanized us, and we can see what the system is doing even within the system itself. The system is falling apart, and there's no way for it to reverse itself unless it changes. It's a steep downward, of course, and I think you can see also that the hegemony of Europe, the hegemony of the United States is being challenged by other systems. And we're going to get to the African system, shortly, and we have to create that African system. And that is what was being done over time by, again, people like Marcus Garvey, but then, the Pan-African concept, across the Atlantic, with people such as Kwame Nkrumah, Jomo Kenyatta, Nnamdi Azikiwe, and others who were present at the 1945 Manchester conference, where Pan-Africanism really that had started in the diaspora became manifest now and was transferred to the continent of Africa. And of course, again, Kwame Nkrumah was a great champion of that, and he said Africa must unite. And as you know, Marcus Garvey had said before, Africa for the Africans, those at home and those abroad. So Kwame Nkrumah was all about the unity of African people, and he was all about the liberation of African people all over the world, and certainly on the continent of Africa. As he said with the independence of Ghana in 1957, he said the independence of Ghana is meaningless without the independence of all the other African countries. So he worked tirelessly to unite Africa. But he also worked tirelessly to further that whole concept of Pan-Africanism. And he did that, I think I mentioned earlier on that we were also commemorating his book, Africa Must Unite. And he also wrote about the dangers of neocolonialism, because he understood the system and he critiqued the system. Part of his movement towards freedom on a collective sense for us, he couched it within the philosophical framework of socialism, but he called it African socialism. I would quarrel a little bit with that, because socialism is really a European concept. It's based on classes, whereas based on Africa traditionally has been a classless society. We have not had classes in terms of upper class, the bourgeois and the working class. But socialism, basically, in terms of Marx and Engels, considers that the class structure as existent within Europe, and then you have to change that class structure by turning it upside down, because that's the result of the capitalist accumulation of wealth in the upper group, which is the landed group, shall we say. And then the functionaries are the middle class, the bourgeois, and then the workers are the proletariat. So that has been the system that has come out of capitalism, and socialists now want to transform that system, but they want to transform it as a bottom-up system in terms of the means of production. So just a simple analysis of those systems, the capitalist system that has been promoted by Europe and America is a system of competition between individuals. And the individuals, as you know, there's Bill Gates, there's Jeff Bezos, and so on and so forth. These guys get on the cover of the Time magazine and everything else, and they're the heroes of Western society and Western capitalism. So what it basically is individual against individual. So there's warfare between individuals as to who's going to be the richest person. And that's how the society is set up. So the socialists come along and says, well, that was created classes. So now what we're going to have is class warfare. Where the proletariat is going to fight, against the bourgeois and against the people at the top. So it's a warring system that's based on individualism and the idea that power resides in the individual, not in the community and not in the wider community of the cosmos. And an African system, of course, is different. Because an African system is based, as I mentioned before, on the divinity, on the human being within the society, as well as nature, and the relationship between all three to sustain the best that there is in terms of the fulfillment of your true humanity. And I would maintain that that basically Western civilization is a mechanical civilization that does not recognize the fullness of what it means to be a human being. Because if you don't recognize the spiritual essence of the human, then you don't recognize fully what it means to be human. Because we're both spiritual, as well as physical. And we really function on the basis of our spirituality. And of course, and now that is being understood even by the science in terms of the quantum physicists, because they've understood now, they're seeing that consciousness is not a byproduct of matter. Consciousness precedes matter. So we have consciousness and energy then that creates matter. Einstein gave them the formula E = mc squared, which means that matter is really a product of energy, and especially slow-moving energy. But with that understanding, what they did, with that understanding of what nature is and what matter is, they went ahead and created nuclear weapons, instead of using it for peaceful purposes and to be able to increase the prosperity of individuals within society. So, in terms of what the quantum physicists have shown us, consciousness is primary. And again, this is something that has come to light in the early part of the 20th century in terms of quantum physics. But this we have known for thousands of years. It was present even in our original civilizations in terms of non-violent civilizations such as Kemet and so on. So we've always known that spirit is primary. We've always known that we are a manifestation of spirit. And we've always known that the fulfillment of the human person is really to manifest our spirit in the physical environment. As I mentioned, the three-dimensional space, time, and matter. Now, that brings us in some sense up to date in terms of getting back to our basic principles of life and the wholeness of life in terms of us as human beings and in terms of how we manifest it in community. Now, we have to bring that understanding, which is traditional, up to the level of modernity, because we now live in an environment where there's significant industrialization, there's significant technology, but, the industrialization and technology has been used in such a way that, as I mentioned earlier on, it has created the climate crisis. And it's creating other crises, as with all the TV and all the cell phones. People don't even know how to talk to each other. Families don't communicate. You go into a restaurant, as you see, the husband, the wife, and the two kids, everybody's in their cell phone. Once in a while, they look up and take something off their plate. People don't talk to each other. They don't know each other. There's no such thing really as community. It's really individuals who get together because of what particular ideology. It could be an ideology of family, but of course now we know that even family is being transformed. And we no longer know what family is. We no longer know what gender is. And we no longer know what community is. So us as African people have to hold on to our traditional values. I'm not going to repeat them again. I think we know them. In looking at we use modernity to increase our productivity and to increase prosperity within our societies. And the technology, for example, as you know, we're heading towards and Benin. I know he's on the case in terms of using technology, but if you look at artificial intelligence, this is a technology that can be a runaway technology. First of all, it can put a lot of people out of work because they can use algorithms to replace just about anybody. But also the artificial intelligence, the technology can teach itself in terms of programming. So it can program itself to do what it wants to do after a time, and they're finding out that the artificial intelligence, the robots, etc., are learning faster and faster and faster. So pretty soon it'll be out of control of humans. So there's great danger in simply adopting technology for the sake of technology. Technology has to be used in terms of the values of your society, in terms of the aims of your society, and therefore, you know, that in terms of Africa and our traditional values, they have to come to the fore, and then we have to choose in terms of how we adapt to modernity. And it's the same thing with the industrialization process. We see corporations, and all the corporations are interested in is shareholder profit. There's no such thing as stakeholder profit. So, you know, so they use the land and they don't refurbish the land. You know, they use the water, the price of the water. They spew their gases into the air, and we have to breathe it. There's increase in asthma, there's increase in all kinds of toxic things in our environment. Materials are toxic. So again, in terms of the industrialization process, we have to look at the means of production. Who wants the means of production? Based on our traditional society. We had that unitary type of society where everybody participated in terms of ownership as well as in terms of distribution. So that means to say now that the government really has to be the top dog in terms of you know, commerce, industry, investment, and what takes place industrially within your society. It doesn't mean you can't have small and medium-sized businesses, but definitely the government has to lead, because the government is the people. And that's what it means by owning the means of production. That government who represents you, you know, has to own the means of production. And we can see, you know, there's a great example in terms of China recently. You know, China in the last 50 years, you know, because of a controlled and focused economy, based on the government, has been able to lift, you know, more than 500 million people out of poverty. And when you look at Africa, you know, we are still the richest continent in the world, but we're also the poorest people in the world. You know, we have more kids out of school, 100 million kids are out of school on the continent of Africa. What we talk about, the youth dividend. I mean, how can we have a youth dividend when our kids aren't going to school and they aren't being trained? So there has to be that type of economic revolution in our thinking. We can't just use the imperialist system in terms of you know, corporate industrialization, where it's all about profit, and it's all about profit for the shareholders. So in terms of your division here, in terms of studying the United States, I think you'll see that there's a lot of what not to do in terms of looking at the United States. And you need to bring to the fore your traditional African values in terms of modernizing and in terms of the technology, in terms of the industrialization process, and in terms of elevating both the prosperity of your people as well as their humanity. So thank you for listening. One God, one aim, one dedication.